Hey there, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show, where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to and learn from everyday entrepreneurs.
This is Heidi Anderson, and I'm here with Jeff Heggie, and we are the Jeff and Heidi Show. And we are kicking off our show by interviewing each other just so our audience can get to know who we are and what we are all about. And so, Jeff, welcome. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Heidi. I'm excited to do this and excited to be able to do this together, but also have the opportunity to interview one another.
Yeah. So Jeff, tell our audience how do you today? How do you generate your income? What business are you in?
All right. Well, in 2005, I founded a company called Kodiak Mountain Stone, and we started out in the manufacturing industry, and we made artificial stone veneer, the cultured stone that you see on houses and fireplaces and whatnot. Since that time, the economy's had its ups and downs, and as a company, we've had to pivot a few times, and we're a very different company than we were in 2005, but we are still going, and I'm still part of that, running that company. But another part that I'm very passionate about what I do right now is I've started to do some business coaching. And so that's a part of my day to day as well now, is I've got a few different programs that I run, some business coaching. I've got some online coaching that I do. I have a mastermind and various things like that.
Oh, okay. So you're an entrepreneur, obviously. And so what made you take the big step to becoming an entrepreneur?
It all my life I've had little businesses that I ran, and I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur from when I was a little kid. And I did everything from running corn stands when my wife's grandpa was a big corn grower, and doing things like that. And then when we got married, my wife had a video made for our wedding, bunch of slideshows and stuff like that, and then a bunch of my rodeo highlights. And it was back in the day that a 2-year-old couldn't get on the computer and do these things. And
Right.
so I learned how to do it, and I started a business doing that. And then I got into real estate, had some real estate, had a mini storage facility, and I was in the banking industry. But my education I majored in entrepreneurship, and in the banking industry, I really loved the opportunity I had to meet a lot of business owners, learn about their businesses, and get to know them. And I got to be good friends with one of my clients, and I learned a lot from him. He turned into a mentor for me. And one day he had a business idea as I was sitting in his office. He was building homes, and he had a stone catalog on his desk. And he says, this is something you should figure out. And that was kind of what triggered me that I was going to step away from the bank, a great paying job with great benefits and security and all those things. But I wanted to do something on my own. And so him and I became partners at that point. And I went to my boss at the bank and told him what my plans were. And he made it a lot easier than I think a lot of people have it, because when I told him, he said, I knew you were going to do something like this at some point. And if you ever need to take a step back, you've always got a place here at the bank. And so that gave me a lot of extra security, knowing that was there. And so it was great. And I guess a big part of that too was I had 100% support from my wife. And, whether it was in real estate or that, when I decided to step away from the bank, she's always been a huge support. She's an entrepreneur herself. And so that makes it a lot easier.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, I mean, it's nice it speaks highly of your relationships with the people you work with, that they said you've got an open door if you ever want to come back. So I always think that's a huge compliment, right?
Yeah, thanks. It,
Yeah.
it, it was a really great group of people I worked with. And I mean, it meant a lot to me that he said that, because it did, like I said, it gave me a feeling of security.
So those are the things that helped you out. What were some of the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome?
There was a lot more than I expected. And I mean, even just specifically in the stone industry, I went to Missouri and learned how to do the manufacturing. And when I left there after I had been trained, I really felt that I knew how to do it. And I remember there was a specific color of stone that I had seen, and that was going to be the first thing I ever manufactured. And I got home real excited about it, and we went into production, got it made, and then the next day when we went back to see our results, I had big plans. The very first stone we ever produced, I was going to keep. It was going to sit in my office and whatnot. And it was a beautiful brown color that I really wanted to develop, and I was very confident that I had done it. But when we took them out of the molds, I had a quick realization that I had a lot bigger learning curve ahead of me than I had thought, because that stone was pink, and I didn't keep it because I threw it as far out in the middle of the field as I could, and it was really unfortunate. But there was a lot of learning curves, as steep ones, as we went through the process of building a manufacturing company. And
you should have just found a Mary Kay Cosmetics salesperson. They probably would have put that pink stone all over their house.
Exactly.
So what was your biggest failure as an entrepreneur? The pink stone, or?
Oh no, there were bigger ones. We've, as I mentioned, our company of Kodiak Mountain Stone, we've had to pivot a number of times since we started. And, one of the things was going big into trying to get into some warmer climates to extend our season for our product, right in 2008. And, things really went south on us quick, and we had to make some big changes. But as I look at the different things of what we've done, and I'll be honest, that there's been a number of, I'd rather call them learning experiences, but we can call them failures too.
Right.
I mean, one was, I was working with a group, and it was a group that we were selling through, and we were selling most of our product up and down the East Coast of the US, but pretty much all over North America to a degree. And we were trying to figure out some ways to bring some really good product to market, but at a cheaper price. And we started looking at doing some of our production offshore, doing it in Vietnam. And it really, looking at the numbers, looking at the different scenarios, we decided that it would be a good thing to push forward with. And so we kind of determined what we wanted manufactured, put in our orders and stuff, and obviously thinking things were going to go great, but it really ended up being a learning experience, because one, when you're manufacturing yourself, if something goes wrong, you can fix it right away.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are waiting for a container to come across the ocean and you don't know something's gone wrong until you open that container, that's a tough fix. You can't just send it back to the factory. And so we actually ended up ending that relationship pretty quick. And fortunately, at the same time, my current CFO came on board with us, and the things that he changed in our manufacturing processes actually made it so that we were manufacturing in the US as cheap as we could manufacture in Vietnam. So in the long run, we actually were doing it a lot better than what we thought we were going to be able to do doing it in Vietnam.
Oh, interesting. So, well, what did you learn from this experience that you would want maybe our audience to learn from, so they don't have to learn for themselves?
One of the biggest things I learned in that whole experience was the value of having someone like Dave, my CFO, who can really pull the numbers together and really analyze it and put the right processes in place and create systems that are scalable. And what we were able to do by once he came on board with us. And so I think one of the biggest things is getting, you go back to a Jim Collins philosophy, is getting the right people on the bus in the right seats, because when you do, it really can accelerate what you're able to do within your company.
So he was experienced in your business, so he could come in easily and see what was going on, or he was just that.
Not at all. Not at all.
His mind just worked that way.
He's like you. He has dreams of spreadsheets.
I love it.
No, he's just a genius when it comes to numbers and figuring out how to put systems together and what he needs to do to make those systems work. Okay. And so he was able to put some great systems into place, and we had the right people working in the factories to execute those systems, and it made a huge difference.
Oh, good. So what was one of your biggest successes as an entrepreneur?
If I think of it from the stone company, from Kodiak Mountain Stone, one of the things that I really enjoyed was we had a number of workers in our factory in Utah that were really hard workers, did great job, but they really didn't see the product other than what they were manufacturing. And making stone is a hard, dirty job. And so they were in the dust and dirt and everything all day, and that's all they had an opportunity to see. But when we started to really, we had a big job that was fairly close to our factory that ended up being, a very significant project. And when they were able to see the end result of what they were actually doing and be able to take some pride in that to me was a success, because it really changed their paradigm of what they were doing. And getting some big jobs like that, and them being able to, whether it's telling family, friends, or whatever, like, hey, I made that stuff.
Right.
It was really cool to see those things.
Oh, that's great. So what from that experience would you like to share with our audience as far as something they could take away from that?
I think one thing I learned from it was, really figuring out what it was that could help employees take pride in what they were doing, so that it wasn't just coming to work. There's some guys that all they would do all day long was take stone out of molds, and it'd be very, very monotonous. There was others that were a lot more creative because they were doing the painting and different things like that. But to be able to help them have pride in what they were doing, I mean, from that point on, our plant manager, he had pictures of projects all over so that they could see them on a regular basis. And I mean, the thing about it is, they started to get to the point where, right now, it's just anything with your reticular activating system. When you get something new, you buy a brand new car, all of a sudden you see that car everywhere, right? Well, when all of a sudden you're new to the stone industry, all of a sudden you start seeing stone everywhere too. But once you start and that happens, when you can start seeing it and saying, hey, that's our stone, that's a lot different, and it's something you can be proud of. And the fact that, I mean, we ship stone all over the United States and Canada. We shipped it to Guam, we shipped it to Hawaii. And I mean, just stuff like that gives your employees something to be proud of. And I think that's one thing that I really learned, is it's important to give them something to be proud of what they're doing.
That makes sense. That's a really good thought. So what is one of the untold stories about you or your company that most people might not know about?
Well, I briefly mentioned it a moment ago. One of the untold stories about me, I guess, was that I did rodeo professionally. I was a steer wrestler, And I did that for a number of years before, well, I worked at the bank at the same time. But yeah, I had an opportunity to rodeo professionally throughout Canada and the US.
That must have been fun, but dangerous? No?
It was a lot of fun, a lot of places that I've been and experiences I've had that I wouldn't have otherwise had. Dangerous, not as dangerous as say a bull rider, but
Uh,
a lot of injuries and broken bones and things that I feel every morning now. Yes.
right. So you show up at the bank, then the following Monday and be it with your arm in a sling, or
Yeah.
oh, that must have been a good topic of conversation with your clients, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
well, but if you could start over today, what would you do differently?
From the standpoint of entrepreneurship, I think one of the things I would do, there's a number of things I would do differently. If I go back to my younger self, I would say don't believe your own lies. Um, and what I mean by that is, especially when I'm working with entrepreneurs now, especially startups, there's so many things, negative things people tell themselves on why they can't do things.
Hmm.
And really that's the first struggle, is getting past that and figuring out how, I mean, you're always going to have people telling you you can't do things, that this isn't going to work, that's not going to work. And usually it's people that are close to you that you respect and stuff like that. But when you start telling yourself that, then it's a lot harder.
Hmm.
I was listening to Richie Norton's podcast with Jeff going this past week, and I really liked something he said. He said, it's not faking it till you make it, because if you're faking it, you're not going to believe it.
Right.
So the way he says it is, it's believing it until you achieve it.
Right.
And I think that's what it is when you decide on something, having that faith and belief in yourself until you can actually make it happen.
Like, I'll see it when I believe it.
Right.
In a way, so instead of the other way around. Um, how do you define success in life? Like, what does that look like for you?
There's another thing that I think there's a lot of different aspects to that, but I think for me, success in life has always been, on a personal level, being able to provide opportunities and experiences for my family.
Hmm.
Family's important to me, and one of the things I've always, in my mind, in 1984, we went on a family road trip that we started in Alberta and drove down, ended up at Disneyland, into Tijuana, then back up the coast on the way home. And my parents made that ultimate experience for us. Like, if we wanted, I mean, one thing I remember, I was 10 years old, and it was like, you can eat whatever you want whenever we go anywhere. And so I had steak at breakfast, lunch, supper. But it was the experiences they created for me have been such a vivid memory in my life. I flew a helicopter into the crater of Mount St. Helens. It was experiences like that. And so it's always been something that's been such a vivid memory for me, that to me, success is doing similar things for my family, creating memories that when they're older, their kids get sick of hearing about this 1984 trip.
So you actually were in a helicopter that went into the top of Mount. Oh wow!
Yeah, and I
Mount
got to
St.
sit
Helens.
in I got to sit in the front, so we had the glass floor and everything, and it was a really cool experience.
That would be interesting. I've only been on one helicopter. It was in Sedona, and we did a tour of
Uh-huh.
Sedona, and it was actually really beautiful. And the guy flying it was a former military guy, and so I had a lot of confidence in him,
Yeah.
because there is something about helicopters that for me, I was like, and that was just a couple of years ago. That was the first time I was
Oh,
ever
really?
on a helicopter. Yeah, been on airplanes all my life, but yeah, the helicopter thing was a bucket list thing that I got taken care of. So, so what do you consider to be some of your success habits?
I'm a strong believer in self-education. I recently, I recently wrote an article about this, and in just doing a little research, I was skimming through Think and Grow Rich, and Napoleon Hill said something to the fact that, I don't remember what the quote was, but it was basically saying, if you quit learning once you're done school, you're going to fail.
Right.
And it was actually going back to the banking days. It was one of my bosses there that got me into reading. And I started reading and really enjoying what I was learning through the business books and whatnot. And you can see behind me my bookshelf, and it's something that I really love, and I've really learned a lot just through reading. And so I think that's probably my top one that I would say. I mean, one thing that's morphed a little bit is through the power of Audible. I listen more than I read now, because it gives me the ability to, whether I'm at the gym or in my vehicle or whatever, I can be listening to something. And so yeah, I think the self-education part and the reading is my biggest success habit.
Filling your brain with good stuff.
Yeah.
So are you a goal setter?
I am. I love to set goals and focus on them. Not that I always achieve them, but I'm always striving for them. And a lot of times it's having them be a little bit flexible, because circumstances, things change, and you got to adjust those things. And, but yes, I am.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I know. Like I feel like if somebody asked me, so where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like 10 years ago, I don't know there's no way I'd be able to tell them I would be sitting here talking to you. That's for sure. I mean, it's like, because you don't know. You have to allow for life to unfold sometimes, and on the way to those goals, right?
Absolutely.
So do you have a coach or a mentor that that's helped you get where you are? Or?
I do. As I mentioned, even looking back when we started Kodiak Mountain Stone, so Dal, who I started it with, has been a mentor since that time and before that time. And I've learned a lot from him. He's run a number of businesses, and he's been a good mentor for me. As a coach, from my coaching business, I work with some coaches myself as well. And in fact, just before we got on this call, I was scheduling a couple of my calls with my coaches in the upcoming weeks, and it's very valuable to me. I have the opportunity to sit down with them on a weekly basis and really go through things on what I'm doing, what I'm working on, what I'm focused on, some of the struggles I've had. And it's been very valuable in helping me build my coaching business.
Well, that's great. So, you have a bookshelf full of books back there. Is there any one particular one that stands out to you as one that had a lot of impact on you?
Some of the classics have been my favorites. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, How to Win Friends, Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Those are probably the two that stand out the most to me. When I first got into reading, probably one of the ones that had the biggest impact, actually, with Kodiak, when I started Kodiak Mountain Stone, was Good to Great. Was a great one that I loved. And
that sounds familiar. Who wrote? I'm trying to remember who wrote that.
Jim Collins.
Okay, yeah. I have heard of that one.
And there's so much good information in there, but I really could go on and on talking about it, because there are so many books that I've loved, but probably those classics are probably some of my favorites and they're probably the ones I've read the most over and over. And, there was a college class when I lived in Canada, that I would go speak to every year. And they would always ask me for my reading list. And so I actually put my reading list on my website now. And so if anyone ever wants to look at that, at JeffHeggie.com under reading list, I've got a link to most of the stuff that I read.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. Also, what are some of the things you wish you had known before becoming an entrepreneur?
Probably number one is what the economy was going to do in 2008. That could have had a good impact for me. One of my biggest lessons that I wish I would have known about and maybe done differently is getting into Kodiak Mountain Stone was a highly capitalized company. It took a lot of money to get the manufacturing and everything, and that was something that's made things difficult at times, especially when things like 2008 happened. And I think that's one thing as an entrepreneur, when you can get into things that aren't so capital intensive, you're not being leveraged as far out. And you can use leverage in a positive or a negative way, but when things go bad in the economy and stuff, that's when the leverage part gets negative, and it can cause some pains. And I think that would be one thing that I wish we would have done differently.
So if one of our listeners is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, what would you suggest?
That's one thing, as people always ask me, how did you get into the business of Kodiak Mountain Stone? Were you a mason? Were you in that industry? And, because it's always, find something that you love doing and turn it into a business. I was not in that industry at all. It was sitting at Dal's desk and he says, "Hey, you should figure that out." And I was like, "Hey, yeah, sounds a good idea. Let's go do it." So, but it is something, as an entrepreneur, you do have to be doing something you love, because especially in the beginning as a solopreneur, you're doing it all. And, you're not a 9 to 5 anymore, because even when you're not working, you're still thinking about it. It doesn't shut off. And so you've got to be able to do something that you really love and that you're passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can, regardless if you think you're going to have a quick exit or not, that you can plan on doing for a long time.
Right.
And to do it in a way that you're not going to over leverage yourself and, put yourself in a tough spot, those sort of things as well. Sure. And of course, as a business coach, I'd say get a coach.
Yeah. Of course.
I always use the example, LeBron James has a coach, Michael Jordan has a coach, Tiger Woods has a coach. There's reasons for it. And even things like, you and I are in the same mastermind group. It's stuff like a mastermind group where you can talk to other people, whether they're in the same industry, different industry, and you can learn a lot from others that you might not see yourself.
Right. Yeah, I think that is one of the wonderful things about being in business now, or if somebody wants to become an entrepreneur now, are those kind of support systems and things. I know when I first started being a solopreneur many, many years ago, it really didn't exist. The concept of a business coach really wasn't there. So it was kind of like, oh, we're going to do this. Okay, let's figure out how to do it. Kind of like you did with the stone,
Yeah.
And so it's nice that that there are people who are experienced, who can, like I said, be more of a mentor and be more of a coach. Because that would have probably been really helpful back in those days. But so I think you have kids, right?
Yes, I have 4.
So what do you teach your kids that like from your experience of being an entrepreneur?
You know, it's funny with kids because they're all so different. And it's something I've tried to be a little careful of, is making them think they have to do what dad wants them to do. But, you know, each of my kids has their own little things that they get interested in. And I try to teach them lessons that I've learned. You know, being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. And so they've seen the highs, they've seen the lows, and hopefully they can learn from those experiences. But I also hope that they can have the attitudes that they know that themselves as individuals can be creators, that they can go out and create things. And my older two, I think, have seen that. Probably my oldest daughter more than my son. He's just one that he just loves to work hard. He's a hard worker. He loves to do that. My older daughter, she is more on the entrepreneurial creative side. I mean, a good example was we adopted a little boy from Africa, and it was getting close to the time that we were going to go get him. And she says, "Can I come with you guys?" And she was 12 at the time. And I said, "Yeah, if you pay your own way." And so she went to a guy that was a graphic designer for me, and she designed a t-shirt, had a picture of the world, said "Forever Family" and stuff on it. And I think everyone in Southern Alberta has one of those shirts now, but she paid her own way. And
wow, by selling those shirts?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And she also was able to make enough money doing that she not only paid her own way, but when we got there to the orphanage in Africa, she bought him a playground set. She bought him swings and basketball hoops and soccer nets and stuff. And it was a really cool experience, but it was a lot of her creativity. And
but the fact that at that age that to get her mind would already think that way, and that you could light a fire under her by going, "Oh yeah, you can go, but you have to pay your own way." Some kids would go, "Nah, never mind." But so that's really that's cool that she took that ball and literally ran with it. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hard things, you know, with being an entrepreneur. Like I say, your kids do see, you know, the highs and the lows, and I hope, you know, my son would like to be one of these days, but you know, there's a little bit of that. Well, I don't know. I saw you guys really go through some, once again, the 2008 thing, which I think almost everybody who was in business during that period of time can relate to on some level. But so is there anything else that you'd like to share that you feel like people should know to get to know Jeff better?
Well, just share some of my contact. Obviously with Kodiak Mountain Stone, my website, it's kodiakmountain.com. And then on the coaching side, I have a lot of different things that I offer, from the one-on-one coaching to the online coaching systems I have. And so I just encourage other people to take a look at my websites, JeffHeggie.com. So it's JeffHeggie.com, and also JeffHeggieBusiness.com. Anyone that's interested in the online coaching, it's JeffHeggieBusiness.com/guided tour, and they can see a free guided tour of what that's all about.
Okay.
And then there's on the JeffHeggie.com, they can find out more about our mastermind that you and I are in, and the different things that I'm involved in. And then anyone on Instagram, Entrepreneur Next Door is my account.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I haven't mastered Instagram. That one's still a challenge for me. But well, this has been fun, and always great to get to know you even better, and our listeners get to know you even better. So.